Hello and welcome to the channel. Today we'll be discussing the Beast Viper belt drive, and in particular we'll be discussing the range test that I did on the board. Now a lot of people ask for this range test because the specs that are listed on the Beast Board's website regarding the range on this board is pretty nice. They advertise that you can get up to 28 miles, and I'm excited to discuss what I was actually able to get because I'm actually pretty shocked, and I think people will be interested in what I was able to achieve. But before we do that, I want to briefly talk about something that just kind of surprised me. I was riding the board. This was the longest that I've ridden the board for one particular time. And when riding this board, it surprised me. I don't know why it surprised me, but the comfort level of riding this board is really high. I rode this board in the streets. I rode this board on the sidewalks and things like that. And really, I rode the board in a manner that I'm not really often able to do when you talk about a board with just regular street wheels. So the comfort level was through the roof. Really surprising. And then the performance, it just continues to impress me when you talk about the speed of the board, the hill climbing capabilities, and things like that. So just wanted to briefly talk about that, and then also want to take a moment to just thank all of my Patreon subscribers, and in particular I would like to thank Shane for being one of our corporate sponsors. So to get to what we are actually here all about when you talk about the Beast Viper belt drive, guys, when I did this range test, this was the first time ever when riding an electric skateboard that I was begging for the battery to die.
Today, we'll be doing a range test on the Beast Board Viper belt drive. Today's an interesting day because it's in the 30s. The temperature is about 35, 36 degrees. I'm about 225. I have about 5 pounds of gear, so that's going to make me about 230. And I'm just going to do a ride through the city. I haven't really mapped out a ride. And if you know Atlanta, you know that Atlanta is kind of hilly. So really, these are not the best conditions to do a range test on a board. But my thought process is if the board can perform well in conditions that are not all that great, then we know that when the conditions are great, things will go well.
And I say that because when I was doing this range test, I really did it in situations that were really not all that optimal. The temperature was hovering right in the mid 30s. So when I started the ride at about maybe 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, it was about 33 degrees. And by the time I finished, it had gotten up to about 35, 36, 37 degrees. So of course, when you talk about riding an electric rideable, there's a lot of factors that impacts range. One of them is the temperature and the weather. Boards generally don't perform as well when you talk about riding in very cold conditions. Some of the other things that you'll notice that impacts range on a board, of course, is the rider weight. We all know that. But then also when you talk about the terrain that you're riding the board, Atlanta is a relatively hilly type city. And it's almost nowhere that you can go where it's just a flat surface. It's always going to have like some type of incline there.
Atlanta is so hilly. I got a whole nother hill to go up. All of these hills are just killing me right now. But that's just how Atlanta is, man. It's so hilly. So it's hard to go somewhere flat and just do a range test. But we're going to cruise it out and see what the results are going to be.
And then some places, it's a significant incline. So saying all of this, I was very impressed with the range that I was able to get on this board. I got 16.5 miles when riding this board, in really conditions that I just did not think were really the best conditions to do a range test. When you talk about the cold weather, I was freezing while doing this range test nearly the whole time. I left my gloves at home, my hands were cold. So I really didn't know what to expect, but to get 16.5 miles, you have to admit it's impressive because there's some boards under great conditions that don't even get 16.5 miles. So that was really impressive to me. And at the time of the range test, I'm about 220, 225. I'm leaning toward 225. The holiday season, you know how people do, we eat. But then I had my backpack, of course, you know, with the things I normally carry. So I'm just going to throw another 5 pounds on there and just estimate that I was about maybe 230 pounds. So to ride this board, it's freezing cold weather out there. Atlanta's hilly. I'm going up different hills and inclines, putting the board to the test. I was very impressed with the results of this board. Now, the other thing that was pretty interesting to me is when I was riding, the board really didn't get to the point where it was unrideable until really like the last, I would say, 0.5 miles. And up until that point, even as the board started to slow down, I was still able to do like 13 miles an hour, which is relatively decent when you talk about how low I had got. I was only on like one bar, the remote was vibrating, and I was still able to do about 14 miles an hour. And then it was after I got to like literally the last half a mile that I could ride the board. That's when she finally was like, that's all I got. And she kind of slowed down to a crawl where it was, really, I'm not about to ride it at that point. I probably could have rode a little bit more at 3 miles an hour, but that's not really a realistic range test in my opinion, because nobody's going to ride a board that slow. Now, some people are going to say, oh, I wasn't expecting that, or some people are going to say they're a little disappointed in the range test. But to be honest about it, when I saw the specs of this board, and in my mind, when I did my initial review, people said, do you think you can get 28 miles? I even said it in my review. I said, nah, I don't think I can get 28 miles, but if I can get about 18, I'm happy with that. And I think that this beast board, if the conditions were better, when you talk about how cold it was, Atlanta's just kind of hilly, there is no doubt in my mind that I could have easily gotten another 2 miles on this board. So that would have put me at maybe about 18.5 miles or something to that effect. So overall, I'm pretty impressed with this beast board and the range that I was actually able to achieve on this board. Like I said, we ride this board a lot. I think the board almost has like 300 miles on it or something to that effect. So a lot of people, with this being a new brand, we're kind of wondering, the specs look good, the wheels look good, but people are concerned about the longevity. So maybe in a couple more weeks or a month or something like that, if you guys are interested in me following up with you guys and maybe just kind of discussing how the board is held up at that particular point, to kind of showcase how the board was doing with the amount of miles that we've been able to put on it, leave a comment below and let me know if that's something that you would be interested in seeing. I want to thank you guys for tuning in and checking out the channel. I'm hoping you having a great start to the new year. If you like what you heard, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Remember, PEVs allow you to be everywhere. And as always, I'll see you at the top because the bottom is too crowded. Peace.